is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Now, youth unemployment remains a major political and socio-economic challenge in Africa, despite the recent strong growth performance of many African countries. But increasing research is showing that e-commerce could be an extremely viable route to dealing with this problem. It is now possible for a person in Kenya to buy goods from a company in Dubai to be delivered to a person in Hawaii. And all of this is possible with much less capital than before. So with this in mind, are the young people of the continent taking advantage of the supposed gap in the market that e-commerce offers? And what more is required in Africa to make entrepreneurship available to more young people on the continent? I'm Beatrice Marshall. Welcome to Talk Africa. Now, enhanced connectivity, investments in energy and digital literacy have seen internet penetration in Africa skyrocket from just 4% a decade ago to 28% today. And this figure is estimated to hit the 50% mark in less than 10 years. With 1 billion Africans expected to shop online by 2025, many tech startups are looking to cash in on the new wave of interest in e-commerce, covering a wide range of areas from agribusiness, health to travel and apparels. Tech startups on the continent raised more than $129 million in 2016, a 16.8% rise compared to 2015. And with consumer spending in Africa on the rise, online shopping is estimated to account for around 75 billion of total retail sales, or 10% by 2025. The continent's e-commerce is growing rapidly at 25.8% annually against a global average of 16.8%. Nigeria leads that pack, followed by South Africa and Kenya. So how can Africa harness the potential for the benefit of its youth? Well, that's exactly the question that Asia's richest man, Jack Ma, tried to address during his visit to East Africa this week. En route to the Youth Connect Summit in Kigali, Rwanda this weekend, Jack Ma made a stopover in Kenya, where he addressed young business people at the University of Nairobi to share insights on entrepreneurship. CGTN's Robert Nagila was at the event where he filed this report.
Wherever he goes, Jack Ma, the billionaire businessman and founder of e-commerce giant Alibaba, attracts a lot of attention. And his first ever trip to Africa has been no different. His first stop has been in Kenya, where he praised the country's ICT infrastructure.
When I arrived in Nairobi, the speed of internet, was so fast. It's so fast. You guys are lucky.
Ma arrived on Wednesday and says he came to share the entrepreneurial spirit and dream. His schedule started with a meeting with President Uhuru Kenyatta and leaders in the tech industry, followed by stops to a tech incubator and a local university where he urged young people to take advantage of technology and data.
Where's the opportunity? The opportunity always lies in the place when people complain. If you solve the complaint, you got a problem. You got an opportunity. This is what I believe. And also, as an entrepreneur, I think most of the projects I heard there is about platform. The difference between build a company and build up a platform is a platform is to enable others, make other people happy. A company is to make yourself happy.
This is Jack Ma's last engagement of the day, and it's packed to capacity. The demand was such that a screen had to be put out here because of the interest generated by his coming here. An indication perhaps of the inspiration he's become to young and upcoming entrepreneurs.
For him to be where he is, there has to have been a lot of work and skill involved. So I'm kind of here to try and pick from his knowledge and see what I can get for myself to help me along.
Mr. Ma says his giant company will source for local partnerships, stressing only businesses that create value in people's lives will thrive.
I was rejected for so many times.
From Kenya, he goes to Rwanda for a UN conference on youth entrepreneurs. He is accompanied by at least 30 Chinese billionaire businessmen looking for new opportunities in Africa. Robert Magela, CGTN, Nairobi. Kenya.
Keep on that. Remember.
Now, a champion of global trade, Jack Ma has been urging developing countries to use e-commerce to bolster their economies instead of creating regulations and taxes that could kill the emerging sector. Let's listen in to more of what the e-commerce mogul had to say.
I believe 80% to 90% of the business in the future will be online. Today we call people entrepreneurs. Many years later, we call netrepreneurs because everybody has to be online, called the net entrepreneurs. Today, you can only sell in Nairobi. You're a good, successful person here. But in the future, if you cannot sell your products all over Africa, if you cannot sell things across the countries, you're not a business people. The world is changing very fast. 1999, year 2001, nobody believed that they can buy and sell things online. Nobody trusted. You don't have a money, you don't have a credit rating system, you don't have a payment, you don't have a logistic, you don't have an internet. The internet speed was so slow. But look at Kenya, when I arrived yesterday, the speed, oh my God, I have never seen such a luxury speed. Much better than America. But I bet a lot of people still complain the speed. Right? Because those people love to complain, they complain all their lives. The speed was bad, nothing. The government is not ready, and sometimes, not sometimes, most of the times, if the government did not know what's going on, it's the opportunity. We created more than 33 million jobs for China. So Africa developed. You don't have to follow the other countries' model. Africa should be Africa. Using the new technology, protect the environment, protect the animals. It's easy to build buildings, but it is difficult to call the animal bags. So I would say, let's move up. Africa will be the next driving source or driving energy of the world after today's Asia. And this is what I truly believe. And I come here, I don't want to sell anything to you guys. I want to help you to sell your great stuff to the world using internet. Thank you.
We're going to take a short break now, but when we return, we'll have more insights into Africa's e-commerce opportunity. To stay with us.
It is a society where there is fairness, there is justice.
Why do they have to look at me that way, as if I'm a kind of gangster, but I'm just a human being?
We went to America and to Canada, but then he didn't like it. So he says, no, South Africa is his home, and we came back.
For me as a woman, I hate the idea of having to caution myself or limit myself.
You can't escape your history.
Africa is not one story.
Welcome back to Talk Africa. Now, as mentioned, the founder and executive chairman of Chinese e-commerce giant Alibaba, Jack Ma, was in East Africa this week to address the Youth Connect Africa Summit in Rwanda. The summit brought together 1,500 entrepreneurs, startups and investors shaping the African technological ecosystem to discuss methods of using technology to drive Africa's economic growth. Before the summit, he addressed young entrepreneurs in Nairobi, and we spoke to some of them to find out their impressions.
The story of Jack Ma and Alibaba and all the many fails he's had and struggles getting to where he has been quite relates to us in our early stages as where we are currently. We feel like it's a story that we can emulate to get ahead and become a big business wherever we are. E-commerce has a very big potential, especially since we are a growing, a developing country, and the pace at which other things were happening in other markets is different. We did not have telephones in Kenya, and that meant that mobile phones grew very fast. And the same thing happens. We adopt technology very fast, and seeing that we do not have developed towns and the lead distribution, e-commerce settles a lot of things. There is a cutting of costs in the distribution system.
I think Alibaba is a great example of how one person with one idea can execute and create one of the most successful companies in the 21st century in a market that didn't exist 10, 20 years ago. For us here in Africa, likewise, there's the same opportunity to create new markets and new services where they previously didn't exist before. I think that's the real lesson that we can learn from Alibaba's success in China and bringing that over here.
My name is Valerie. I'm an interior design student. And so what I'm expecting today is to get an insight on entrepreneurship, how to go about it, and be inspired by him, to go on with my business and push it out there and just do the best that I can.
And now to offer further insights into the potential opportunities that e-commerce offers Africa's youth, I have expert guests standing by. In Lagos, Omolara Adagunodo, she's the managing director at Jumia Travels in Nigeria. In Johannesburg, Vivian Onano, she's a youth activist and member of the UN Women Global Civil Society Advisory Group. Thank you both for joining in the conversation. Omolara, let me start off with you in Nigeria. Now, Jumia was founded about 5 years ago. It is now touted as the largest e-commerce platform in Africa. You're operating in several African countries. What is it that has made you succeed, though, in this environment?
Okay, for us, what has been distinguishing is the fact that we adapt to the local markets a lot. And because each market you would find, even though we're one African market, it's a bit of a fragmented market. So we have the ability, which has helped us to adapt to each of the local markets. We infuse a lot of the localities in what we do and in our offers and in our presentation to the customers. I think that has been one very important ingredient for us.
Omolara, though, if you look back 5 years ago, though, because e-commerce is quite relatively new in Africa, if you look back 5 years when you started, how different is the operating environment now? How different are things today as opposed to 5 years ago?
Oh, okay, well, it's totally different, to be honest. If you look at how much people have moved, how much they have embraced tech, and how much they have accepted a new way of working, a new way of seeing life, it has been phenomenal. 5 years ago, you'd barely have somebody confident enough to use his card in paying online or to, even try to go online to shop. Today, the customers' mindsets are different. The first thing they think about when they want to shop, when they want to book a hotel, when they want to buy food, is go on Jumia. So I think it's totally different now. We have more acceptance today than we did 5 years ago. We have more confidence in the market today than we did 5 years ago.
Vivian, you're listening to Omolara, though, and e-commerce is quite a new platform for Africa here. Are there opportunities here for Africa's young people?
Absolutely. First of all, I'm very thrilled with the work that Omolara is doing with Jumia, which has really grown over the past 5 years, as you said. But as you look at the continent right now with the case of youth unemployment, but also rising number of users when it comes to social media, I think a good example has been Instagram, the way people have tried to use it to build their businesses. I have a good friend of mine from Gambia she is into swimsuit wear and Ankara dresses, and she's used her Instagram to market herself and also sell to people outside of Gambia and outside of West Africa to Southern Africa. So there's a big opportunity, and what needs to happen is we need to remove the regulations and the taxes for us to build this new platform and new opportunity for young Africans to take advantage of.
When we talk about taking advantage of, Vivian, though, because we are talking about 420 million young people in Africa, but we are also seeing about possibly 3% of those get jobs. How are Africa's youth, though, taking advantage? Are they able to take advantage of those opportunities offered by platforms such as e-commerce?
No, absolutely. Right now, if you look at the number of young people who have access to mobile phones, and if you look at Kenya, the way M-Pesa has revolutionized the whole business space, even those people who did not have access to bank accounts, which majority of them are always young people, now can be able to save their money and can be able to do transactions using the mobile phone. So there's opportunity there, there's curiosity, and there's more and more young people who are trying to do the businesses using the e-commerce. The problem is when you go to the rural areas where most of the young people are, there's still not that knowledge and exposure to the technology so that they can be able to take advantage and also be part and parcel of this revolution. So I think there's the curiosity, there's the need, but I think there's more to be done when it comes to access and also education.
Omalara,
access to information too, sorry.
Vivian has mentioned, Omalara, that there is a demographic in the rural setup that are not able to access internet, given that Africa constitutes about 10% of the total world internet users. Is this a demographic that you're reaching out to at Jumia?
Yes, we have that challenge, to be honest. And, like I said, one of the successes we've had at Jumia is the ability to adapt to these situations. What we have done to mitigate this a bit at Jumia is to create what we call the J-Force, which is basically a team of online direct sales agents who are able to then tap into this opportunity to buy and sell on Jumia to people who don't have access to internet. So there are about 45,000 of them we have today, scattered all over Nigeria. And basically what they do is help people in their communities, people in their localities who don't have access to buy online to do the purchases, and then they get paid a commission for that. So in that peculiar situation, we actually had an opportunity to empower the youth the more, to help them earn a bit more money.
Right. Vivian, and if I just come back to you again as to how big that consumer market is in Africa now, how big is the consumer market in Africa when it comes to e-commerce?
The market continues to grow. For example, here in South Africa, last year alone, they had 48% adults who did the cross-border online shopping, and the numbers were at 35.1 billion rands, and they are forecasted that by 2018, the numbers are going to rise to 53.1 billion rand. So there is a big market there's a need for it, but how do you make sure that everybody can be able to access it? And also when I go back talking about the rural population, access to infrastructure, power, access to electricity becomes a major hindrance. So if you have a mobile phone, but you cannot be able to charge your mobile phone, and you don't have access to a bank account, so you cannot be able to make the online purchases and transactions, I mean, you're left out. You're left out of this new wave of industrialization or new wave of doing business. And there's a lot that's happening in the rural areas when it comes to agriculture, that if we're able to open the markets and if this population is able to tap into the e-commerce, it is going to definitely revolutionize the unemployment, but also the food security that we are grappling with on the African continent.
With those challenges, though, Vivian, how viable then is e-commerce in Africa?
It is, because when we step aside from the challenges, if you look at the urban areas, young people are actually trying to tap into the e-commerce. And I was giving you an example of the young lady from Gambia who is using Instagram to be able to do her transactions and be able to sell to different markets. So there is a big market for it. I think we just need to improve on our infrastructure, but also on the side of the new businesses, removing the regulations and the taxes so that we can maximize on it.
Omalara,
but infrastructure is really big as we move forward and as we continue to expand the markets.
Omalara, is there a big market now for e-commerce?
There is, yes. There is a big market today, and I think, you know, as infrastructure improves and as the communities grow more and understand more about e-commerce and how it can help them and how they can reach out to people, you know, that never even knew they were on the map. I think there is still a bigger opportunity to grow it still. But today, yes, we're not where we were 5 years ago. We're probably not where we should be yet, you know, when we look at companies like Alibaba or Amazon. But we're definitely moving forward with e-commerce. It's going to get bigger.
So how would you, you mentioned two companies, Amazon and Alibaba, and of course, Jumia is touted as the Amazon of Africa, though. What would it take to put Africa on the same level, or African entrepreneurs or Africa's businesses on the same level as Alibaba or Amazon?
Okay, to be honest, there is still a lot of work to be done in Africa as a whole if we want to get there. You know, like I mentioned earlier, we have a highly fragmented market in Africa, and it is really difficult, you know, to move things cross borders between countries, even neighboring countries. It is expensive. So the first thing we need to think of is how to involve governments and how to make them part of building e-commerce and how to introduce them to e-entrepreneurship, how they can come in here.
Vivian, introducing e-entrepreneurship to Africa's youth may be an avenue to solving Africa's youth unemployment problems here. So Vivian, how can young people then tap into this potential? What would young people need to do to tap into this potential?
That's a very good question, Beatrice. So for young people to tap into the e-commerce and e-entrepreneurship, I think access to technology is going to be very important, and access to reliable sources of power, it's also going to be very important because everything is happening online, and that has a lot to do with technology, and that has a lot to do with power. But also access to exposure and opportunities for them to maximize on this, because there are those who are already talented and already have their ventures on the ground, but they still just don't know how to come online, how to do the transactions online, because there's a lot of technical information that's involved in the whole process. So how do you make sure that they're actually well equipped to be able to handle the information, the data, because this is people's information that's very private. How are they able to handle all that data and also analyze the data for them to be very successful in that space? And as Malara was talking about Alibaba, I mean, Jack Ma the other day said the most important skill in the next coming years is going to be data analytics. So how do you make sure that the young people from the continent are well equipped to be able to handle all that?
Right, Vivian Onano, we'll leave it there for the moment, but thank you for joining us on the program. Vivian Onano, youth activist and member of the UN Women Global Civil Society Advisory Group, joining us there from Johannesburg. Thank you very much for your insights. Omalara, I just want to get a few more comments from you, though, because you did hear Vivian's views on how to get young people engaged in e-entrepreneurship. You're on the ground. You're 5 years old now in that business. What would be required to make e-entrepreneurship available to young people on the continent?
Well, I'd say we should start from the education system. we can infuse this into the curriculum right from school, because if they have been educated to think of things differently in the past, and today the world is totally different from what they have been educated to think of, what they have been educated to see as their reality, then I think the curriculum should also take into account the fact that things have changed, and we need to start this orientation for them. We need to start educating them about the advantages of e-entrepreneurship. So when they come out of school, they're well equipped, they're ready to go for it. That's the bedrock of it. That's where we should start from and educate them properly on this. The next thing is to have government incentives for them, for government to be a full part of it, get them hubs, be involved fully in hubs, encourage young people to go into it, and also have mentorship programs where they have other young people who have been successful come out and share with them the successes that they have had in e-entrepreneurship and e-commerce as a whole.
When you look at government incentives, as you've mentioned, because policy is a key factor here, when you look at government incentives, and particularly in your area, in your region there, though, what kind of incentives are African governments putting in place to enable the growth of e-commerce?
What they have put in place, I'd say from here in Nigeria, there is a co-hub in Lagos, for instance, where young people can come in and start their offices, start working, where they have a mentorship program going on with people who have been in the industry for longer. We have times in the community where we come together as companies in e-commerce to speak to young people, give them orientations, and these are government incentives that they have put in place for them. There should be more, to be honest, because there is so much more government needs to do to bring these young people up and make them ready for the future that is just ahead of them. And we need to involve government. We need to get government policies in their favor. We have some things on ground, but it's not quite enough yet.
You have been very optimistic, Omolara, though, about the future of e-commerce. So do just paint for us a final picture, though. What is the future of e-commerce, in your view, in Africa?
In Africa, e-commerce is very soon going to be, I'd say, 80% of the commerce we see, because today people are thinking differently already. People are viewing commerce differently. We have, for instance, in Jumia created 2 big campaigns in the year. One is the Mobile Week, and one is which we've adapted from the West, the Black Friday, where we have discounted prices. And now people's minds are tuned to waiting for these big campaigns to do their shoppings, whatever they want to buy. I think it's only going to get better. I think it's only going to get bigger. And very soon we would have e-commerce as major commerce, the main way to shop, the main way to buy, and the main way to do anything you want to do in Africa.
Thank you very much for joining us on Talk Africa today, and that's all we have time for this week. But thank you, Omolara Adagunodo, Managing Director at Jumia Travels Nigeria, for your insights. And remember, you can join the conversation online through Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And do tune in again next week for more Talk Africa. From me, Beatrice Marshall. Goodbye.